Welcome to another Q&A for Bible in a Year for January 16th through the 30th, those readings. And so I'm just going to go through these. I got 5 questions that were emailed to me. So thank you for those who emailed questions. I'll just go through them right now. The first one was on, can you expand on why Ephraim and Manasseh became 2 of the 12 tribes when they are the grandchildren of Jacob and not of his 12 children? Or did they become of the tribes? So this is there's normally 12 tribes of Israel. Well, Joseph, he isn't named as a tribe. Actually, his 2 sons are chosen. Jacob blesses Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, Joseph's name means increase, and he's rewarded. It's in a certain sense he's rewarded for his trust in God and for saving the family by trusting in God that God would provide. And Joseph goes down to Egypt as a slave and actually becomes second in command and is allowed to save his family from the famine. So there seems to be this, Joseph's name means increase, and in chapter 49 of Exodus it says Joseph will be fruitful. And so there's kind of this hinting at that 2 of his sons get to become kind of a double portion, I guess. Now later on, we'll read in Exodus that Leviticus is set apart in a special way as the priestly tribe, and so it works out well with if you had there's 13 tribes when they leave Egypt, and then there's when Leviticus is chosen to be the priestly tribe. They aren't counted amongst with the other 12. They're the priestly. The other 12 are given land. Leviticus, the Levites, they're given kind of particularly just for worship of the Lord, and so, so there's kind of a double thing of Joseph being rewarded, as well as later on Leviticus, when they get pulled as the priestly tribe. God's all-knowing, so he knows what he's doing. That there's 12 tribes, and then the Levites are particularly for service to the Lord, and we get into this second portion of Exodus. We'll see more and more of that. The next one was from Exodus chapter 6, verses 15 through 20. So why are the sons mentioned? So this is the genealogy of Moses and Aaron, and it goes through them. So the sons is typical, kind of like our family name is passed on in our society by the father, the same type of thing, inheritance rights. But we'll see in the book of Numbers that the inheritance rights, there's exceptions. If that daughters, if there's no sons, it'll pass to the daughters, so it stays in the family. And then Aaron and Moses were sons of their aunt. Yes, oddly enough, yes, they are. And this person makes the comment, well, might that be the reason that Moses have a speech impediment? Maybe. There's not a whole lot of details on that, but yeah, God works through crooked line, but the main purpose of the genealogy is all these connections, as these names are going to be showing up later on, some of them especially toward the latter part of that list. But Exodus, question, Exodus chapter 8, verse 10. How were Pharaoh's magicians able to duplicate what Moses did? So the plagues, so the serpents, the turning water into blood. Well, there's kind of two typical understandings, theories of what they were doing. Either it was because of demonic, kind of occult power that they were tapping into, which if they're a pagan worship, and many times it's very demonic and kind of what the focus is and stuff, and pagan cultures and stuff at the time. So the demonic, or there's more of a trickery illusion. They're kind of alluding like they're kind of it's a good trick they're able to pull. But you see that they shortly, as the plagues get bigger and bigger, they aren't able to do anything. They aren't able to replicate any of that. So it's either kind of demonic power that they're using, or it's just a trickery illusion. So God isn't providing them isn't the one acting on their behalf. they're playing a trick or tapping into the dark demonic power. Exodus chapter 5 speaks of, did Moses lie to Pharaoh saying that they were going to have a great feast when they escaped and freedom to worship God? So this is when Moses goes before Pharaoh and says, let my people go. And that's it. No, he says, let my people go. God says, let my people go that we may go have a feast go 3 days into the wilderness and have a feast. Now, we think of feast as like food typically, but the word feast here is being used in the sense of worship service, liturgical worship. This is the whole idea of when we speak of saints' feast days. Really, it's pointing to when we go out 3 days and worship. So it's not referring primarily to a feast of like Thanksgiving feast out in the wilderness. It's referring to worship. So a different, not our common use of feast, but this is where we'll see as the Jewish God enacts Jewish feasts, a liturgical worship feast, kind of like we have like we have Christmas, Easter, Pentecost. With God's people, he's going to start. He'll establish certain feasts for them to hold annually. As we get further into the first couple books of the Old Testament. And then Exodus 12, verses 43 to 50. Person just had more of a question about, it just seems confusing. The ordinance of Passover, very confusing. And this more has to do with who can be involved. So earlier it speaks of the lamb that has to be slaughtered. So I'm just going to read the passage, kind of go through it, and I won't do this typically, otherwise I'd be reading half the Bible probably. But this starts chapter 12 of Exodus, verse 43 and following. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat of it, but every slave that is bought for money may eat of it after you have circumcised him. No foreigner or hired worker may eat of it. It may be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the flesh outside, and you shall not break any of its bones. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. So, here, if a stranger sojourn with you and would keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. Then he may come near and keep it. He shall be as a native of the land, but no uncircumcised person may eat of it. There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you. All the people of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. And so it speaks of those who participate in the Passover, if they need to be circumcised, which is kind of for males, that was how they would enter into the covenant. There's no evidence of a special right for girls. In the Old Testament, it seems more if they were born into the family, they were kind of automatically inserted into the covenant family of God in the Old Testament. But the males had to be circumcised. So this prerequisite to partake in the Passover, and then it had to be eaten in the home. So when God says they got to stay in the home and everything has to be eaten, the lamb has to be eaten that night. And none of its bones, and you shall not break any of its bones, which actually John in his gospel, when Jesus is pierced with the lance on the cross, St. John references this part of his bones shall not be broken. This is one of the idea of Jesus is the new Passover lamb. Now, you might wonder, well, it's kind of redundant, it seems, but that's kind of it mentions you have to be circumcised. If you're not circumcised, you can't partake. It's supposed to be eaten in the house, and then it says to circumcise again. There's almost like an A, B, A. It kind of goes back. So there's kind of a pattern. We do this in English at times. We don't really catch it up, but it seems redundant because that's the structure that's being used here. But it mentions there shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you. This idea there's one law. So that's one thing very important that God will lay down as he's giving them precepts and stuff to Israel, that no, there's one law for you and other foreigners and stuff living among you. It's not like you get special privilege, you get, treated a certain way and they get treated like garbage. No. If they're going to partake they can partake in the Passover feast, the lamb, if they follow the same requisites that God requires for the Hebrews, which for males it's circumcision. Now you may say, well, what does that do? Well, a good analogy connection is in the new covenant, Jesus is the new Passover lamb. And to receive the Eucharist in the Catholic Church, I got to believe that it's really Jesus, and I got to be in full communion with the church. So sometimes I get people ask, well, why can't everybody just receive? And well, you got to be in full communion. So the same thing here. Circumcision for males, that was kind of entrance into communion with the Hebrew people for males. Girls, they were just automatically in if they were kind of either by marriage or by family bonds, or they connected themselves in some way. We'll see that with Ruth, where she kind of enters into the covenant family through her mother-in-law. So yeah, it's speaking that anyone can. So this is an important part of it's not just like, well, God just allows only the Hebrews to partake in these. No, anybody can, but there's requisites for every, for all the guys at least. There's certain requirements, and so it's circumcision that God gave to Abraham after Abraham decided to have relations with Hagar, and God promised him you're going to have a child with Sarah, and Abraham decided to do things his own way, and so every circumcision points back to Abraham's kind of infidelity to God. Even though Abraham is the father of faith, we also see he wasn't always with the program with God. So that's what the Passover ordinance is there. That's referring to those who can partake, and it's kind of the requirements are the same for everybody, or at least for the guys. They got to get circumcised to be part of the covenant people, to partake in the covenant meal of the Passover. So please keep sending your questions. We'll be more interesting stuff in the next couple of weeks, and I apologize for the last I think video that came up for first part of February. I accidentally put it in the wrong playlist. It was in like the St. Joseph playlist, and so someone noticed, mentioned me, Father, that video's up. So it's up now. So hopefully I don't make that mistake again in the future. God bless.